Welcome back to the Moss Rods channel. My 66 Mustang Coupe is finally done, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what I managed to come up with. If you're new to the build, or you need a little reminder, I started off with this AMT 66 Mustang Coupe kit that I grabbed in the NNL North Show in Minnesota back in June. I had been looking for one of these kits because at the time I had just recently finished designing my Ford 200 6-cylinder 3D printed engine, and I wanted to put it in a Mustang. 6-cylinder Mustangs were pretty common back in the day, but you don't see any today because everyone's swapping V8s into them. And as far as I know, there has not been a 6-cylinder Mustang kit that has been released. So why not make something interesting? And I like taking cars that are less desirable options. If you remember, last year I built the 56 Chevy Del Rey, which 56 are kind of the least liked of the Tri-5 Chevys, and it had a 235 straight 6 in it, which again is a less desirable engine, and I wanted to make it something interesting. And that's kind of what I wanted to do here as well. I wanted to take a least desirable body, which is the coupe, which I believe is actually, depending on the people you ask, less desirable than even a convertible, with everyone wanting a fastback. But I actually like the coupes. I think they look really cool, and wanted to make one, well, look cool. And I did that while actually using a 200 straight 6. So that's kind of enough talk. Let's go ahead and take a look at what I came up with. And here it is. This is my modern track car inspired by 60s SCCA Trans Am series cars. And if you know your Trans Am series history, you might realize that it looks a bit like the Terlingua Mustang. And that car was a big inspiration for this build. I love the Terlingua Mustang and kind of wanted to give a vibe of a car that someone found in a field, well, maybe not a field, it's pretty clean, an old daily driver that someone found and wanted to make it into a race car, kind of paying homage to the Terlingua, but also modernizing it so that they could run it on modern track events. And this is kind of what I came up with. So the first thing I have to say is I don't really like this kit, though unfortunately there are not a lot of options. As far as I could tell, there were only 2 Mustang Coupe kits that were released. Obviously, first being the AMT, and second being an Ari, which is a Japanese company that released a Mustang Coupe in 24th scale back in the late 60s. And it was only released once. And I can imagine it not being a very easy to find kit. So I ended up with the AMT, which I didn't do a ton of research on before buying, so I was a little shocked to find out that this was, I believe, an old promo model, so not a lot of detail. The chassis is all one piece, the axle, the exhaust, the front suspension, all of it is molded together, which is not super fun. In fact, the kit actually has metal axles that go through the oil pan on the original V8, so we'll get into that later, but I ended up actually just removing that and remounting the front tires. But yeah, so the engine bay as well didn't have a lot of detail. I was able to add some there. I didn't do a whole lot of work on the chassis, and the interior was fine. It's an interior tub, which, not ideal for painting purposes, but we made it work, and I'm actually pretty happy with how this came out. So I guess we'll start talking about some of the details on it. So this did take a lot of body work, mainly to just delete all the badges. So all the badges, the trim that runs along the rocker on the kit, that was all sanded down. Ford letters on the roof, or on the hood, that was sanded down. I did a front bumper delete, so I had to build up some material here to kind of replicate the factory bumper delete look. And the kit also had sinkholes in the back due to screw posts, so I had to patch those as well, but all that was pretty simple, just a lot of sanding. And that's pretty much all I did in the way of body modifications. I did end up using the kit lower splitter, which was nice. The rear is pretty much kit standard. I did actually run a bumper on the rear, which some Trans Am cars were running bumpers, some were not. But I did end up cutting the valence here a little bit in order to clear a rear tow hook. And that was kind of another one of my favorite parts of this build, is doing all the little safety details. So it's got tow hooks front and back that I designed. I also designed the battery kill switch that I added here to the back. It also has trunk and hood pins, which I did not design. I found those on Colts. So to kind of sell the whole race car look. You'll also get a little teaser on the engine even when the hood is closed with the Wino V8 plate, which I love. And I guess we'll go ahead and get into the engine bay. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here's what the updated engine bay on the car looks like. I was able to add a few more little details to help fill up the engine bay a little more, including trying to replicate the stock brace here in 3D printing that. I also added a steering column just out of some styrene that runs down there. I found these nice fluid reservoirs on Colts, and I had one of these MSD ignition boxes that I got somewhere. I'm forgetting, unfortunately. So that kind of adds a little more detail. No battery, because this car would have had the battery relocated to the trunk where you saw the kill switch. And yeah, so I did a little bit of wiring. There are fuel lines going to the carburetors. You can probably see a little bit of it right here. It's got plug wires. It's got the breather hose, right? I'm trying to remember. That goes to the water pump. No. Water pump. Why am I forgetting what this is? Well, it's got whatever that is. It's got a radiator hose that goes to the water pump. So I did my best to try to improve on the pretty vague engine bay as much as I could. And now I guess we'll go into the interior, which I was actually smart and filmed before I got the car put together. So here's the finished interior for the Mustang, which I'm actually remembering to get footage of before it gets trapped inside of the car. So let's go ahead and take a little look at it. So lots of 3D parts used on this. We'll start off with the bucket seats. These I found on Colts, and then I found the racing harness as well. The harness belts themselves are made from masking tape that I painted blue and fed through the buckles. Then the dashboard's still loose, so I'll go ahead and take that off for a better view. On the inside we have a better view of those seats. There's a fire extinguisher in the passenger footwell. You can also see a little bit of the flocking that I did to kind of give it a little bit of a carpeted look. There are some switches on the center console. That would be your ignition, your fan, fuel, all those. Then you have your 3D printed shift lever as well. And then I designed some aluminum looking pedals to give it a little more of a racing look than the just bland black pedals. And the roll cage was partly from the kit, so this main bar is from the kit, though I did widen it, and then the rest I just made out of styrene. And then you can also see I did a little bit of flocking on the luggage shelf, and then I went a little heavier on the dry brushing on the seats and the door cards, just because I've found with how dark the inside of the car can be when it's all put together, you can go a little heavier on dry brushing just to help everything pop. So now we'll take a look at the dashboard. So I did a few modifications, including stripping out the radio and the ashtray, and it's hard to see, but the gauges were also removed. Let's do this. If I look, find a piece of white card. There you go, you can see everything a little easier. And then I also have a race dash. A little hard to see, so I'll show you my little trick with this car. So I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to display it with the steering wheel on or off. given that this car does have a cage, it would theoretically have a removable or a quick release steering wheel just to make it easier to get in and out. So I wanted to display it with the steering wheel off, but then I thought maybe not everyone will understand that and think that it, broke off in transit. So I just added some little magnets and made the steering wheel, whoops, not super strong, but strong enough to hold the steering wheel in place. So we go ahead and remove that. We can get a little better look at that race dash. This is a Haltech style. Add a little bit of gloss Mod Podge just to give it a little bit of a glossy screen look, and then painted the shift lights. And then the steering column was also something I designed just because the kit steering column was pretty boring and just a straight piece of tubing. It was not realistic at all. So this has more of an updated steering column with the adapter for the steering wheel and then the turn signal lever. I also flocked the dash, but I used embossing powder for this because that gives it more of a scale flocking look as opposed to flocking, which gives it more of a scale carpet look, if that makes sense. Now, if you're not familiar, it's more common with modern race cars and some older race cars that you would flock the dashes just to cut down on glare. Same reason the Mustang has a black hood. And then I also did a little bit of flocking on the steering wheel to give it kind of an Alcantara look. Excuse me. So yeah, that would be the interior. So I'll go ahead and glue the dashboard in place, and then we'll be able to get this inside the car. So here we are, back on the exterior of the car. Not a whole much more to go over. I did end up designing some steel wheels for this, just because I like the look of steel wheels. I know a lot of cars in the Trans Am series were running 5 spokes, American Racing style wheels. And it's a cool look, but it's not really what I was feeling for this car, so I decided to add some steels onto it. I also found some slightly nicer tires, which we'll go ahead and take a look at the chassis as well, which again, very simple. But these are some tires that I had from the Revell Fox Body Mustang drag car. These are the stock tires, which are nice because they're just a little bit wider and they have a little more modern of a tread pattern. Nothing too aggressive because this car would still be a bit of a street driver. So thought they were a nice little upgrade to the just boring thin bias plies that came with the kit. As I mentioned, everything is molded together on the chassis, so I was a bit lazy. I did leave the stock exhaust. I just didn't highlight it to hopefully hide it. I don't display my cars with the bases visible 99% of the time, so I don't really pay too much attention to them. Sue me, whatever. I did throw some exhausts onto here. This is just bent styrene, just dual straight exhausts because it's hard to make a 6-cylinder sound loud anyways. So might as well just run some straight pipes. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the car. Pretty simple, but pretty happy with how it came out. Again, especially considering how not ideal these kits are. I have heard, or someone had recommended, that there is, I think, a GT350 kit that has a little nicer chassis which might fit. I don't know if that's the 24th scale Revell one. But, yeah, again, wasn't too concerned. Plus, by the time they had recommended that, I was already pretty much putting the car together. So didn't want to have to just tear it all apart. So, but I appreciate the suggestion. I love, if there's a better way to do things, I'm all for it. But yeah, so that's basically it on the car. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you around for the next build, which still trying to figure out what that is. I know I've been teasing it, but I would like to enter the Porsche build off at some point. I do have a smaller scale build, which I'm actually interested in starting. The little teaser for that is it's going to be emergency themed. Well, not as in the show, but as in like emergency vehicles. So that'll be something to look into. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.